There are calls this morning to overhaul the way that the National Health Service treats the thousands of women who are left suffering post-traumatic stress disorder after harrowing experiences when giving birth. It's all in a new report into maternity services led by the MP Theo Clarke.
Thea made the headlines last year when she told the Commons that giving birth was the most harrowing experience of her life. And the report heard from women such as Divina Johnson, whose 3 separate childbirth experiences were all traumatic. And they're both joining us in the studio. Divina, we heard from Theo in the Commons from last year, but tell us about your story.
I have 3 C-sections for my births. My first was 2016, and it was the most terrifying experience I've ever been through in my life. I thought I was going to die. I had an epidural done incorrectly by an anaesthetist who was over her shift, to which she told me. She then laughed at me when I was in the fetal position and couldn't move, because she said people don't normally act that way when I give them an epidural. I had a midwife who said, in my 35 years, I've never seen anyone react like that. I think you should take it out, to which she did. And the pain then immediately went away, which let me know that something had gone wrong. I was given the drip. I didn't know what a drip was at the time, to speed up my contractions and to kind of push me into labour. I really just felt like a problem that just needed to be dealt with. Just hurry up and get this woman to have her baby. After my C-section, in the recovery, I had the midwife just pull my gown down and say, your baby hasn't eaten for hours, you need to start breastfeeding, and just put her on. And it kind of continued that way of just having really awful care, if you could call it care.
Well, it's an interesting point, isn't it? And Theo, you spoke very movingly about your experience giving birth to your first baby. You were worried you wouldn't make it, weren't you?
Yes, well, I absolutely related to you saying that you thought you were going to die in childbirth. And so many mothers wrote into our inquiry making the same point. And today I'm publishing the very first national inquiry into birth trauma by parliamentarians. And one of our headline recommendations to the Prime Minister is to actually call for a national maternity strategy. So I was very surprised to discover there isn't one single document setting out what all hospital trusts in the UK should be offering.
Can I ask, Theo, because I would imagine there are a huge number of women watching who will relate to what both of you have said. To some degree, there might be women who've had similar experiences where they actually thought they might die in childbirth. But there might be women, and I would count myself amongst them, where it just was at no stage straightforward. There were concerns and worries. I had good midwifery care, but things didn't go fast enough. And then there was emergency intervention. And I just wonder, is there a sense, Theo, that we kind of just accept childbirth is going to be difficult and in some cases is going to be traumatic, and that's just the way it is?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I've been really struck by reading all the stories. There seems to be a real taboo around talking about risks in childbirth. And I hope by me very publicly, obviously, discussing it in my speech in the Chamber and obviously parliamentarians talking about it today, we can try and break that taboo. And I think what really struck me reading through all of the submissions, and every single one was read, and thank you to so many people for writing in, is that there does seem to be a postcode lottery in this country on maternity services, and I don't think that's right, and I think the Prime Minister needs to do something about it today. Can
I ask about the report and the conclusions you reached? Because you've, as you said, had huge numbers of testimony, and we're getting the same today, people sending us in kind of emails and messages. And it could be that most births go well, but there are some which are kind of difficult. It could be that there's a resources issue and things have got tougher in the NHS. But I wonder whether, in fact, what you're saying is there's something about the culture of our care, the way we think about providing maternity services, which is a problem, that there's a flaw in our thinking. We're not getting it right and maybe haven't done for a long time. And I wondered, is that right? And what is the flaw, the problem? What are we not getting right?
I think firstly it's important to say that a lot of mums will give birth in the UK and have a very good experience. Our report obviously focused on the very challenging stories. But I do think you're right, Ed. We need to have a frank conversation about culture in the NHS. And I've talked about this myself. You know, when I came out of surgery, I'd been awake for nearly 2 hours on the operating table. I'd been separated from my daughter and was really traumatised. And I remember pressing the emergency button, and this healthcare professional came in and took one look at me and said, "Not my baby, not my problem," and just walked out and left me there.
What did they mean by that?
Basically saying they're completely understaffed on the ward, that they didn't have the time to provide the care for me, having just been through this huge 40-hour labour and this very difficult surgery. And that's something that's come up time and time again.
But that sounds like a resources issue. You know, there aren't enough midwives, not enough time. But I'm just wondering whether it's something in addition to the resources issue about the way in which we go about, whether it's consultant or midwife-led care. Do we not put the mother first, or do we not think about risks and assume it would be okay, or do we only deal with the problems as a kind of, you know, afterthought? You know, what is it about this care which is going wrong?
So I think what really struck me is that I think we are so focused on the mum when she's pregnant, and then after delivery when the baby arrives, we almost seem to forget there's a second patient in the room, and that's the mother. And one of my headline recommendations in the report, and we have 12 sort of key recommendations, and the first one, I'm afraid, is to retain and recruit more midwives, because we do know that we need to have safe maternity staffing levels in our hospitals. And I very much hope the Health Secretary today, when she comes to speak at my report launch in Parliament, will set out the government's response and how they're going to do that.
Divina, what do you think would have made the experience better for you? Would it have been to have more staff? Or do you feel like you weren't taken seriously? Because it sounds like from what happened with the epidural, that when you said, this isn't right, you were dismissed.
Yeah, there is no compassion or kindness that I received from any staff through any of the births that I had.
None of the staff?
None of the staff.
Was that different whether it was doctors or midwives?
Yes, it didn't matter whether it was a midwife, it didn't matter whether it was a doctor, whether it was a consultant. I didn't receive any type of care or compassion. There wasn't anyone that said, "How are you? I'm sorry that that was so bad.
Shocking.
That shouldn't have happened to you." Not a soul. When I said I had my panic attack for my second birth on the table, and the anaesthetist said, "Divina, you need to calm down, otherwise we're not going to be able to cut your baby out." That's not what you would say to someone who's having a panic attack on the table about to give birth to their baby.
Well, and in the history of being told to calm down, no one's been told to calm down when they're told to calm down. So,
Right.
I mean, a horrible, horrible way to be treated. And of course, you'd had such a terrible experience first time.
Yes.
Should have been even extra care.
Yeah, and that was not the case. And with the third, I would probably say even worse, when you have a consultant say to your face, "I expect your kind to be stronger than this." So having someone who's outwardly racist say that to you while you are naked below because they're there to support you, and having to then say nothing because you feel like that's what's safest for you to do so that this woman can do her job because I can't do this on my own.
Goodness.
Theo, I was wondering whether we've had such a culture recently of trying to make the birth process as natural as possible, whether part of the problem is sometimes you need more medical intervention earlier. But it sounds like from Divina's situation and experience that wouldn't, you know, she was having medical intervention earlier and it made it no more compassionate for her.
Well, first, I'm so sorry to hear about your personal experience. I'm afraid that does chime with a huge number of the submissions that I read. And to give you sort of other stories that came through, I had mums writing to me saying they weren't being offered pain relief, or if they were, it was only paracetamol when they were in labour. I had a mum said to me she started bleeding on the floor and she was told, "Stop making a mess, you should clean that up." I had another woman of Indian heritage who started hemorrhaging. They didn't notice because of the colour of her skin. And I think these are the type of things which the Health Secretary really needs to address to improve maternity services in the NHS.
One final question. I mean, I think in the report you're saying there should be a maternity commissioner, maternity czar. We have, in the Department of Health, a chief midwife. Why isn't the chief midwife doing that job already? What is it about the new person who would be different from the chief midwife?
So I think the key point is I want to have a maternity commissioner who reports directly to the Prime Minister. I think we've seen recently the huge number of investigations that have had to be had in hospitals just down the road from me in Shrewsbury and Telford. And I think we need to have somebody who's accountable to the Prime Minister specifically to deliver on maternity services. And they, of course, should be working with the Chief Midwifery Officer. But I think that's an important distinction.
Okay.
Thank you for the work that you've done, Divina. Thank you for sharing your experience in the hopes that it makes things better for all new mums. Thank you very much indeed.
We've had a statement from NHS England who say we're working with local leaders at all trusts with maternity and neonatal services on a dedicated national programme so that their teams can create and nurture a culture where women are listened to, their choices respected and care is personalised, equitable and safe.
If you're affected, we have put advice and support at itv.com/helplines. And where can people read the report, Theo?
So the report will be published at 9 o'clock on my website, which is www.theo-clarke.org.uk/birth trauma.
And thank you very much indeed also to our viewers who've sent in their experiences as well. We really appreciate that.